How is it going, guys? Oh my god. Chapter 123 of Tokyo Ghoul. This was such a good chapter. Having to wait 2 weeks for this chapter I think was totally worth it, but I'm finally going to be getting to my review right now. I'm actually recording this really late, so I'm just glad I'm able to actually sit down and just talk about this chapter. And if you guys have not seen my live reaction yet, definitely go watch it because I thoroughly enjoyed this chapter. So right off the bat, I want to ask you guys, are you done recovering from this week's chapter? Because that last panel, it took me until my second read through and to actually realize what the hell was going on in that last panel, because seeing Mutsuki holding up that picture, but then also having something else in her hand, and I was like, what the hell is that? I saw a ring, but it didn't click until my second read through where I was like, holy shit, that's a hand. Did Mutsuki do what I think she did? Is that Yoirko's hands? Like, there are so many questions I have right now. If that's the case, this is going to be totally insane, but I took a lot of notes. I read through this chapter multiple times. I'm just really excited just to talk with you guys, just to delve through this chapter and just overall look at what it is we got in this chapter and where we could see this going in 124. So sit back, relax, let's just go through this chapter. I'm going to be jumping around in this chapter because the first thing I really want to talk about, and I even mentioned it in my live reaction, is that Mutsuki mentioned the word sensei whenever she was talking to Kaneki so many times in this chapter. I even did a little thing in my live reaction where it was like, the word of the day, sensei. So if you guys have not seen that, definitely go watch that in my live reaction. But I had to count how many times Mutsuki said sensei when speaking to Kaneki, and Mutsuki said the word 9 times. And I actually don't know if Mutsuki ever said sensei around Heise back in the early days of Tokyo Ghoul, but it stood out a lot to me within this chapter, and I just had to point this out again in this review. So when you guys go and read this chapter again, definitely look at how many times Mutsuki said the word sensei, and it just goes to show the difference in how Mutsuki views Heise now compared to back in early days of Tokyo Ghoul, because I have a feeling that her saying sensei right now is definitely more in a sexual and more desirable way than how Mutsuki would have said sensei back in early Tokyo Ghoul. So that's just that right there. So I just want to get this chapter up right here. I need to go to a few pages here. So I do have the chapter up while I'm actually going to be talking with you guys. And the next part I want to talk about is, I think, a very interesting part, because right here we have Ure on page 5 of the chapter getting this gift that is basically sent for Mutsuki. And this is actually leads into pretty interesting stuff that could happen later on down the road, because we have Ure taking this gift up to Mutsuki's room. He politely knocks on the door, even though he knows that Mutsuki probably isn't at home. And what he finds in here is just very disturbing and twisted, because Mutsuki has basically stapled or just, cut onto the wall, hold up by all these knives, are these pictures. And when we go on to the next page, on page 7 of this chapter, it's all pictures of Yoirko and Touka. Now, I'm not sure if this is the same picture that Bunjin ended up giving Touka at the end of that one chapter, either 1 or 2 chapters ago, but I'm not sure if she just photocopied this picture, made a whole bunch of copies, and then just went to town on stabbing Touka's face onto the wall with every picture. But this spells a lot of bad things to come between the QS squad and Mutsuki, because Ure for a long time, at least since the end of the Rue Island arc, has known that there's been something up with Mutsuki, especially with the whole Akira, Takizawa, and then going up against Amon at the end of that arc. Ure has sensed something very different about Mutsuki. Even Psycho has, smelt the blood of humans on Mutsuki. So this right here is going to be a catalyst that ends up leading to a division, I think, between Ure and the rest of the QS squad with Mutsuki. And if Mutsuki ends up going back to the chateau after this confrontation with Kaneki and Touka, and even have an aura with her at this confrontation, I think that there is going to be a division amongst Mutsuki and Aura with the rest of the QS squad, and this is going to lead to future problems down the road, and I think that Ure is going to end up having to fight maybe even Mutsuki later on down the road. So this little section right here is just the tip of the iceberg on the tragedy and the problems to come later on in later chapters of Tokyo Ghoul. But now it's time to delve into the meat of this chapter, and I want to lead this off with a question for you guys, and it will probably be in the title of this video. Is Mutsuki beyond saving? And I definitely want to hear you guys' answers on this question, because with the events that have taken place within this chapter, with the fight breaking out between Mutsuki and Kaneki and Touka, is Mutsuki right now beyond redemption? Because especially with that last panel, if that is what I think happened, I think the question pretty much is yes, I think she might be beyond redeemable, even though I love Mutsuki's character and just how antagonistic she's been in these last couple arcs, and just the way that her character has been on this downward spiral is just very interesting to see and watch, and just watch how Ishida crafts this story arc for Mutsuki as it's been going from chapter to chapter. But now it's time to delve into the meat of this chapter, which is the Mutsuki going up against Kaneki and then later Touka, because oh boy, this was fun to read and just watch as it unfolded as I've gone through every page. Because at first off, Mutsuki is just very, controlled at the moment when she's talking with Kaneki, basically saying it's like, oh, I'm so glad to have found you. But then eventually, like when Mutsuki is basically telling Kaneki, why don't you come back with us? And Kaneki's like, I can't leave. And Mutsuki sees Touka. It's at that point that the switch goes off in Mutsuki, and this is when the battle royale within Cafe finally kicks off, and Kaneki was not expecting this in any way possible, because Mutsuki ends up slashing Kaneki right on the cheek, and then this is when the battle royale begins, because Mutsuki just starts throwing knives, just trying to cut Kaneki into ribbons, and I gotta find the dialogue box that ends up like with Mutsuki saying it, and I think it's some interesting dialogue, because let's see, there's the smiling face on page 8, but then here it is. So, come back. I will remove everything that stands in your way. And I love the way the panel is drawn, and it just goes to show how twisted and warped Mutsuki has gotten. And I actually have to bring up this picture as well, because on page 10, we can see the knife skill that Mutsuki is displaying while Kaneki is dodging all of these moves. And I actually found this picture back on chapter 16 of Tokyo Ghoul on page 8. And it goes all the way back to when Juzo was actually training Mutsuki in the arts of using the knives and, being able to throw them around. And when you look at how, terrible, I guess you could say, Mutsuki was at handling the knives, and now you go to chapter 123 and seeing the skill that Mutsuki displays in using her knives, I think is just absolutely tremendous, and just goes to show the growth of this character, even though that is very twisted growth at that. But I just love, and just pointing that out is just something that's very, very cool. But then eventually, Mutsuki ends up, using suppressant drugs with her knives, which I think is just a total badass move, and very smart at that. I was not expecting that at all to pop up within this chapter, but seeing how Mutsuki was actually smart and actually chasing a ghoul is using ghoul suppressant drugs. Very smart, even though that she is very deranged and just overall, batshit insane, still using strategy, which I really, really enjoy. But then we just basically have, Mutsuki activating her Quinke, using her Bikaku Kagane, and just, smashes Kaneki out into the streets. And this is where I was like, yo, I was right about this chapter. Aura was backing up Mutsuki this entire time, and it just had been laying in wait until Kaneki was thrown out of Cafe. And we have, the revelations that Aura was in fact here the whole time, and ends up striking Kaneki in the back of the neck. And I just gotta say, even though, I don't really understand Aura's, motivations all too well, the design on this panel of his eye trail and just the dialogue he gives, it's very, very cool. But then this is where the main event happens, because Touka finally steps in, and I think this is what everyone has been waiting for ever since, Mutsuki showed up at Cafe Ri, was a throwdown between Mutsuki and Touka. Basically, Kaneki's two waifus going at it, and I think everyone right now is picking sides. And from what I can gather from you guys, I think you guys are more on Team Touka right now. And I think with the revelations at the end of this chapter, a lot of people right now are heading towards Team Touka, wanting Touka to murder Mutsuki. So I love this little action sequence we get between Touka and Mutsuki, because when you look at this, they're just going at each other. It is just a full-on cat fight, and they're just dodging left to right. No one can really land a hit, which I really enjoy, because it just goes to show how skilled both Touka and Mutsuki are, but how skilled Touka still is. I really enjoy that, and it just goes to show that, yes, Touka has not missed a beat, even though she hasn't really been that shown as much within Tokyo Ghoul. But what I really like about this is how they both land on the Cafe counter and end up fighting on the counter. If this was animated, I would love to see this, because it just looks so cool. But I still have one question for you guys. On page 17, the dialogue that just has cat written on the page over and over again. I have no idea what that means. So if you guys could leave comments, and if you guys actually know why it is that someone is basically just screaming the word cat, 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 please let me know down in the comments below. I just have no idea really what's going on in that panel, even though I love the fact that they're fighting on top of the counter in the cafe. So cool. But the one panel out of the fight between Mutsuki and Touka that I really liked was when, as soon as Mutsuki gets Touka in a chokehold, there's this panel to where Touka activates her Ukaku Kagane and it ends up striking right through Mutsuki's abdomen/stomach. And I immediately saw this and was like, this looks exactly like Donato fighting Ure. And I actually do have a picture right here of these two going at it. And let me just bring it up right here. It is just so cool to actually see this. Like, with these two pictures shown back to back, and I'll have it up on the screen for you guys, just look at the similarities between these panels. And I just love how, like, Donato looks exactly like Touka and Ure with Mutsuki. So right now we have two Q members that have gotten the same treatment so far. So if Psycho ends up getting the same treatment, we'll be 3 for 3 with the original QS members. But just looking at these two panels, I think this just looks so cool. And just the parallel and symbolism that Ishida does with his work and does callbacks to previous chapters is just really cool. And I really enjoy that. But I think that what everyone wants me to talk about right now, and this is probably the talk of the town for everyone that is talking about this chapter right now, is the fact that Mutsuki reveals the picture of Yoirko and Touka, but then also reveals the hand that has a ring on it. So this right here is like, you gotta be kidding me. Is this Yoirko's hand that Mutsuki is holding? Because this goes all the way back to the first page of this chapter where Yoirko is just in the middle of a bridal shop looking for a wedding dress, and then someone out of the corner ends up saying her name. And I think what we're led to believe is that that was Mutsuki, ended up doing something to where either like captured Yoirko and then ended up decapitating her hand, or this could be like the most positive way of thinking, asked for the ring and ended up just putting on some random dismembered hand. And that is the best bet that we could hope for right now, because if Mutsuki did harm Yoirko, not only will Touka go berserk next chapter, Bujin, the husband-to-be to Yoirko, is going to flip his shit, because I could totally see Bujin just like basically murdering Mutsuki if he ever finds out that Mutsuki was responsible for this and Yoirko does in fact survive, because Yoirko would tell Bunjin and then Bunjin's just gonna choke out Mutsuki and kill her. Because right now, not only will Touka and Bunjin hate Mutsuki, I feel like the entire fandom also hates Mutsuki at the moment. I still like her character because I love characters that are very antagonistic. That's why I love Furuta as a character, even though like he's crazy in his own twisted way. Mutsuki's character is just very interesting to watch, and I love how Ishida has just been crafting her story arc ever since the torture with Torso and moving on from there into where we are right now. And so this right here just leaves open for a lot of stuff to happen, because I can totally see next chapter Touka's going to be going in, because as soon as Touka realizes that that is possibly the hand of Yoirko with the wedding ring and Mutsuki just like rubbing this in Touka's face, Touka's going to go berserk. Touka is just going to go unleash all hell on Mutsuki, and if Mutsuki doesn't die next chapter, she will definitely end up going back to the chateau very wounded, and then we'll probably get that confrontation with Ure talking with the rest of the QS about the predicament with Mutsuki, and then Kaneki and Touka will escape, and then we'll see what kind of like will happen in future arcs with Kaneki, Touka, and the rest of GOAT. But right now, boy, this chapter had so much just to delve into, because, oh man, I'm just looking at this last panel right here, and there's just so much that could happen next chapter, because I saw this hand, and on my second read-through, I was just like, holy shit, if that's Yoiriko's hand, not only is Touka gonna murder Mutsuki, Bujin is just gonna like flip his shit. And I don't even know about Kaneki right now. Like, what is Kaneki gonna be doing in all this? Because right now, he's got a fight back aura. So this overall chapter delivered on so many good things. I am so looking forward to the next chapter next week. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little review. It's a little more of a discussion base, and I actually did just a little bit of research, you know, with the symbolism with Touka impaling Mutsuki being very similar to Donato with Ure, and also just seeing the character growth and the skill in Mutsuki with her knife skills, I think is also very interesting as well. So Where do you guys think that the story is going to be heading in these future chapters to come? Do you have a feeling that Urei is going to confront Mutsuki about this deranged nature that has come over Mutsuki? Because I feel like that's going to be happening really, really soon between the QS members with Mutsuki. But how do you think this fight is going to go between Touka, Kaneki, and Mutsuki? Is anyone else going to get injured, or is everyone just going to be at a stalemate, and then, Mutsuki and Ora go back to the chateau, and then we get that confrontation between Urei and Mutsuki? So leave your thoughts in the comments down below about, guys, what you think is going to be happening in this next chapter, because I only feel like that this is part 1 of this confrontation between Mutsuki, Kaneki, and Touka. It's going to continue into next chapter, and maybe a 3rd chapter if we're lucky, but it might be concluded next chapter. I'm not sure. So give me your thoughts down in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel if you guys have not yet. I would love to talk with you guys about Tokyo Ghoul, and if you guys have any other thoughts, please feel free to leave them down there. And if you guys just want to say hi in the comments, leave a comment just saying hi. I would love to talk with you guys down there. It's so much fun just to converse, theorize, and speculate about what's to come in these later chapters of Tokyo Ghoul. So that's going to be it for my review, guys. I am so looking forward to next chapter next week. So until chapter 124 comes out next week, I'll talk with you guys then. All right, guys. See you later.